Okay. Okay, welcome to our press conference, the final for this year. Ambassador Polyanskiy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Theodore. It's very kind of you. So, I welcome everybody who made it possible for us to meet today. I understand that some people are online. We also are quite aware of the fact, I think that somebody else is speaking over there. I think it's my clone, maybe, I don't know. Okay, so we'll wait for the sounds to be turned down. That things happen on the eve of New Year. Everything is okay right now?
Yeah. No sound.
No sound. Okay. So we decided, despite the fact that everybody is now in New Year mood, not to cancel this event, because this is our tradition to meet with you, at least to try to meet with you once a month to answer your question, and we decided to continue with this. So without further ado, I am open to your questions. Yes, please.
So Nabil is the anchor member, then Arti, then Kaleb.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. On behalf of the UN Correspondent Association, thank you for this briefing and happy holidays. My question is about the talks that are expected early January with the United States, Russia and the United States. Can you tell us what does Russia hope to achieve from these talks, and if you can give us some details where and when the talks will be held? And second question about Syria. There was a huge strike last night in Latakia port. It's most likely was an Israeli strike. What's your reaction on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I start with the second question. Of course, we do not move any escalation in this region. We don't work, however, with highly likely information, so we need to investigate it further and to understand what has happened. But again, we don't think that any situations of this kind contribute to stability in the Middle East and the situation in Syria as well. That's for sure. As for the talks, I think I maybe will be the last person who hasn't yet pronounced on this, because everybody is speaking, and there have been a lot of details directly from my president, my foreign minister, my superiors, so I don't think I can add anything here. I heard about the plans to hold these talks in early January. I heard that a meeting with NATO is also was also proposed by the NATO staff. So as far as I know, the preparations are ongoing. With NATO, we yet need to clarify what are the details of this proposal, because, as you know, the problem for us all this time was that we wanted to engage military people, and we have our military people ready. But NATO didn't want to wage this kind of professional dialogue, result-oriented. It was eager to flag some political problems in front of us. We think it's not the situation which deserves the work of Russian NATO Council. So that's why we need to clarify what our NATO colleagues have in mind. Russian-American discussions are ongoing at expert level. There will be a meeting for sure. I don't have confirmation on final place and final date. But it will be early January. As for what we want, I think we also commented on this many times. This is a serious proposal. We want serious guarantees from the United States, first and foremost, and from NATO. We were patient for quite a long time. You know, all this background history that after the Soviet Union ceased to exist, there were oral promises, oral guarantees from leaders of Western countries that NATO will not be expanding. There were even hopes that NATO will be transformed in some kind of political organization. Even I remember there were ideas of its merging with OSCE at some point, but this was always only theories. But in fact, despite the situation of dissolution of Warsaw Pact, NATO remained, and it's difficult to call it a defense pact, because it was designed to counterweigh Warsaw Pact. Once Warsaw Pact ceased to exist, there is no logic of NATO still existing. And of course, it's what was quite opposite to the logic that we were promoting at the beginning of the 90s was the expansion of NATO, inclusion of new member states, and placement of serious ammunition and personnel at the eastern border of NATO. It's our border. It's very close to our border. We didn't come to NATO borders. NATO came to us. That's why we have absolutely legitimate reasons to be worried about it. We promote the principle of indivisible security, that security of one state cannot be ensured at the expense of security of the others. It is the core idea of many documents that were signed at the beginning or in the middle of the 90s. So we want to come back to this spirit, and we are quite constructive, but I don't think that our colleagues will get away with some blah, blah, blah thing, as Greta Thunberg puts it. So we really want something serious this time. It's not an ultimatum. It was also underlined several times by my foreign minister and my president. It's a constructive proposal, but it's the proposal that works for everybody and that is in the interest of everybody.
Sure. I'm Caleb Maupin, the reporter for RT. I'm asking about Russian President Vladimir Putin has asked Joe Biden, the President of the United States, for reliable and legally binding guarantees that NATO will not expand further east. Now, at this point, what is the UN stance on this issue, and will the UN get involved if the situation further deteriorates? And my second question would be, what is the position of Russia at the UN on the consistent U.S. accusations that Russia is about to invade Ukraine, and do you get a sense where most UN member states stand on these accusations?
Well, two questions as far as I understand. As far as I understand, UN is not involved at all at this point at these discussions. It's a question, first and foremost, bilateral between Russia and the United States. I assume that all UN member states would welcome such an agreement and such a move, which will make our world a much safer place. So here I see the interest of the whole UN membership, but UN as an organization, I think it's not involved. I haven't heard about anything of this kind. As for the threats, alleged threats of Russia to invade Ukraine, I think this problem can be solved very easily, because it was born in the heads of some politicians, so it should die in the heads of these politicians. It's just change of attitude, because there is nothing happening on the ground that would justify such a change of mood from our Western politicians. Even the numbers of the troops vary greatly. We underline that this is our sovereign territory, and we have the right to move the troops, to place the troops, to conduct exercises. This is our right, and we do not have to report to anyone about this. And there has been no significant military activity despite all the allegations of this kind. So it's very easy to ask those who are promoting this news to calm down, and then the problem will go away as it was created.
And let me also ask, does the UN support the importance of upholding the Minsk agreement in light of the Russian president saying that Kiev intends to dismantle it?
Sure. UN, of course, supports this. This I can tell you for sure, because the Minsk agreement is blessed and given green light by the UN resolution 2202, if I'm not mistaken, of 2015. That's why the implementation of Minsk agreement is something that UN is keeping an eye on. and I think we discuss it on a yearly basis in the UN, and this is a legitimate forum for this kind of discussions. Okay.
Thank you, Ambassador. 15 Western countries have denounced the arrival of Wagner in Mali, which Mali has denied. What is the real position of Russia on this matter?
This is also a very sexy story for Western media recently, I think maybe number 2 after the Ukraine. Again, to a large extent, it's a product of imagination of our Western colleagues. Well, first and foremost, I personally and my colleagues, we do not have any information about Wagner Group. I don't know whether it exists or not. It's not part of our official toolbox. If it exists, and I assume it might be some private military company, then there is a market for such companies. I know that there are tens or even hundreds of these companies, military companies, acting abroad and providing their services in the same way as the commodities are being provided. You can approve of this kind of business, you can disapprove of this kind of business, but everybody is engaged in it, including our British, American, and French colleagues. It's enough to mention some of US mercenaries involved in operations in Venezuela. Some of them were caught, and that's how this whole story of American private military companies acting in Venezuela came to light. I remember also, I don't remember the exact name of the company, but there were a lot of problems of U.S. personnel, private military companies acting in Iraq, for example.
Blackwater.
Thank you very much. Yes. So as for alleged involvement of Wagner Group, again, it has nothing to do with any officials in Russia. It's not supported by the state. If it's on the market, then it's up to any country to choose whether they cooperate or do not cooperate with this company. And Mali is not an exemption in this kind. I don't see any reasons why Malian government can't take their sovereign decision to engage with this military company or with another military company of this kind from other country. I mean. There is also a governmental cooperation between Russia and Mali, but this is a different story, and it has nothing to do with these allegations about involvement of Wagner Group. Okay.
Thank you, Ambassador. 30 years ago, the Soviet Union collapsed. My question is a little bit personal, if you allow me. Where were you when that happened, and how do you see this event 30 years after? Thank you.
Well, a very good question of the new year. Well, it was a very interesting period of my life. I was 20 at this time, so part of my life was in the Soviet Union, and I can't say that I remember a lot of bad things about Soviet Union at this time. The latest stage of Soviet Union was very much different from the one that is usually quoted in Western media with all these Gulag things and with Stalin, with his repressions. We never faced anything like this. We were convinced in our right course. We were all young communists, and we were going to pioneer camps and enjoying it very much. Frankly speaking, I still have a lot of friends who came from there. So there is a little kind of nostalgia because, you know, when you are young, everything that is happening is somehow better than today. So the trees are higher when in your childhood, yes, as the proverb goes. The mood was different. Very few people, frankly, understood what was happening, because it was really a wind of change. It was a stream of change, and nobody could analyze anything. Now, looking back, of course, I have a better understanding of what happened and what should have been done maybe in this case. This was also a consequence of several tragic personal mistakes. I will tell you personally that I think that Mr. Gorbachev and Mr. Yeltsin contributed very much to this, and all these problems, all this turmoil could have been avoided. I don't know whether the Soviet Union could have been preserved or not. This is a hypothetical question. But a lot of things, a lot of stabs in the neck were made at this point, which rendered the whole process irreversible, unfortunately. It's on the one hand. On the other hand, at this time, everybody was very much, I would say, charmed by the West. Everybody was thinking that people in the West are our friends, that they really are giving us a hand, that we will live in some better place, a better world, and nobody will ever remember about the Cold War, about East and West. Well, I would say that the famous Scorpion song, The Wind of Change, which was performed in Moscow at this time, it was really a symbol of this time, symbol of the mood. But eventually things have gone other way, and very quickly, very soon, we saw that the intentions of our colleagues are not as innocent as it was presented at the beginning. We saw a lot of Americans and Europeans exploiting our country, trying to split it, to crash it, to split Russia further, to promote separatism in Russia, to promote divisions between Russia and newly emerged states. This is not a secret right now. Also, we all heard, it's not a secret about all these pledges that NATO will not go eastwards. It was not a secret. It was shown on TV. There were people approaching the microphone from Germany, from the United States, pronouncing this thing publicly, that a new world is being born and there will be no more NATO, there will be no more NATO expansion at least, and so on and so forth. Now they all admit that either they say that they haven't said this, which is not true, or they bluntly say that they tricked us, which also doesn't add to the trust between East and West right now. And well, the first 10 years of independent Russia were very difficult, very challenging, and we were really on the brink of collapse. I remember it quite vividly, and the economic situation was very dire. But then, at the beginning of the 2000s, we gradually started to get on our knees, then on our feet, and the moment we kind of restored our national pride and our national capacity to live as independent state, we have started to be perceived as a threat by the West, by the United States. What we're having now, we have kind of a remake of the Cold War, Cold War 2.0. I'm putting aside the question of China, which is a separate story. They will tell you themselves how they feel. But as for Russia, we are really very much puzzled because of the situation that the reasons for East and West confrontation are no longer there. There is no ideology. There is no communist ideology that Russia or anybody else promotes. Our economic structure is very close to that of the United States or any other Western country, but confrontation is there, and the efforts to portray Russia as an enemy are also there. It, of course, brings to your mind some conclusions that the question was not of ideology, but of geopolitical struggle, which is back to existence right now, unfortunately. So, answering your questions, the feeling is very mixed, but I would tell you that nobody is planning or trying to recreate Soviet Union right now in the form that it was before. There is a famous quote of President Putin, which is misquoted always, when he was asked about what was the dissolution of the USSR, what was the meaning for the world. He said it was one of the biggest geopolitical catastrophes of the 20th century. That's true. And then he said, those who don't want to reestablish Soviet Union, they don't have heart. And usually people stop there. But the second part of his quote was, but those who want, they don't have mind. And this is really what we feel. And we are for the closest possible economic integration. We are for the friendship with all our neighbors, including Ukraine, and first and foremost Ukraine. But nobody is planning or longing for those days and wanting to recreate Soviet Union as a centralized state with ideology. This is absolutely out of the question. And the younger generation which has emerged, they have strong patriotic feelings, but they have very little memory of what was the USSR. For them, it was a different state. For me, of course, the situation is different, but, well, I tried to explain what I feel.
Okay.
Thank you. It's Jennifer Peltz from the AP. With the NPT Review Conference coming up next week, I believe, could you talk a little bit about Russian objectives for this conference and whether you think realistically anything can come out of it?
Well, I think my colleagues are discussing right now the modalities of NPT conference, which is supposed to start indeed on the 4th of January, if I'm not mistaken. Well, this is a complex event. This is a review conference. It means that there will be a lot of assessments and suggestions of what's going on. There will be different voices about how NPT regime is being enforced, whether it's efficient or not efficient. So there will be, for sure, heated discussions. We have our own approach. We also have close coordination with our P5 members of the United Nations Security Council, and there are a lot of issues where we see problems eye to eye. So as for outcome document, I know that the review conferences sometimes have problems on this, but well, I wouldn't anticipate the discussion we all expect it. There are all the chances to have the outcome document, provided we act in constructive spirit and we listen to each other and don't create unnecessary problems. Okay?
Thanks very much. I just wanted to ask you, I don't recall you ever saying that Moscow had a government relationship with the Malian government. I assume this is the current military government you're talking about. So maybe you could just describe that relationship. And also the State Department put out a statement saying that the Wagner group deal with the Malian government is worth about $10 million a month. And given your relationship with the Malian government, where do you think this money will come from? Thanks.
You know, this is very, I would say, these are two questions that are not very much related to me and to my work, what I'm doing here in the United Nations, especially the second one. As for our relations with Mali, I can tell you that they have always been very friendly. We have long traditions of cooperation and friendship with the Malian government, with previous ones, with the current ones. For us, it's a legitimate government. There are no doubts about this, and we cooperate with this. And we don't see any reasons why we should not view cooperation with this government as something positive. We want to help Malian people, and we are determined to do so. Again, I commented on Wagner Group, on all these allegations. It's difficult for me to imagine what can be invented in the minds of our Western colleagues or American colleagues. So I can't comment on everything, every crazy idea that they have in their mind and every allegation that they invent, because they don't even care to refute any allegations that didn't come true. They just make new allegations, and everything fits in the picture of malign Russia promoting its malign interest in the African continent. So what you told now fits very much in this narrative, but it has nothing to do with reality, unfortunately. So I'm not in a position to comment on any financial issues or on any details of these allegations.
But what do you mean by cooperation, Russia
With
cooperating?
Mali?
Pardon?
With Mali, you mean?
Yes, thanks.
Cooperation means cooperation in training. We have always had military cooperation, government to government, in training of Malian army. But it's not limited to military issues only. It's also in the field of education, of healthcare, of everything that makes a state a state. We also want Mali to be a strong country. We know that there are serious problems with security. We are very worried to learn about the fact that Malian government has very symbolic control, if any, in the north of the country and now in the middle of the country as well. We don't think it's normal, and we think that in interest of the whole of international community to help Malian government to recuperate control over its territory and to help it to fight terrorism, because Sahel is a very dangerous region. After the Western operation in Libya in 2011, there are a lot of military groups and terrorists who came to Sahel, and they are terrorizing all the Sahel states. Mali is maybe the primarily and the most threatened victim among all the Sahel countries. So we think that we should really render our support to Malian state in this regard. This is absolutely different story from what is being alleged about Wagner Group. I'm speaking about government-to-government cooperation.
Thank you. Kristen Salumi from Al Jazeera. I'm wondering, given the news that the Russian Supreme Court has ordered the closure of the rights group Memorial, rights groups have been coming out saying this is part of a trend in Russia, that there's been a crackdown on human rights activists and opposition groups and so on. How would you respond to those accusations? And are you worried that this could come up at the UN, either in the Human Rights Council or some other forum here, given those accusations?
It's very difficult for me to comment on Memorial Group because I don't know the details. There are certain issues with this group that are being resolved through the law enforcement agencies in my country. I heard that it is somehow related to the situation of foreign agents in the Russian Federation, because, as you know, we adopted the law on foreign agents, and this means that any organization that has foreign financing should announce this and should be treated as someone who is promoting the interests of another state, possibly promoting at least. And one should take counter of this when dealing with this state. Memorial is really a very, I would say, long acting group. It has been acting from the very beginning. I dealt with this group for many years, especially when I was working in Poland, and they were dealing with all this Katyn thing. And I frankly had a lot of questions to them from the source of information that they were taking and the allegations that they were spreading. But this was just weird and strange to see serious people spreading all these absolutely unsubstantiated claims and all these things. But then I lost trace of what they were doing. I can't say that they are very notorious in Russia at this time. You mentioned crackdown on human rights, but well, what do you mean by this? Frankly, there are allegations that this or that personality is being arrested or prosecuted, but it's all being tackled through national jurisdiction. There are courts, there are appeals, there are advocates, there are lawsuits about this. So I don't think it's something that is different from Western countries in this regard. There are a lot of cases which call for attention in Western countries as well, and with necessary setting, it can be also viewed as crackdown of human rights and everything like this. But we do not interfere into internal affairs of other states, and we don't teach the others how they should live and what they should or shouldn't do. That's the big difference between us and Western countries. So it's very difficult for me to comment on the situation in general. Whether I am afraid that it will be raised in the UN, well, we have nothing to be afraid of and to be ashamed of, because everything we are doing for the benefit of our country and our people. And we have total support of our people in this regard. So why should we be afraid of any discussion of this kind? But I don't see any reason why it should be raised by the UN. Okay.
Two more questions from the room, then we'll go to the chat. Caleb.
Oh, sure. I was just hoping you could tell us about the significance of the nomination of Belarus as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council in light of EU-Russia tension and the situation with the Poland-Belarus border disputes, migrants, etc.
All this range of issues. I haven't heard about updates on the recent situation on Poland-Lithuania border. Frankly, I heard about some UN agencies, I think, finding irregularities in tackling by migrants by all sides. But as far as I was informed, the accent was made by those agencies on the unlawful treatment of migrants from the side of Poland, first and foremost. And this is very good. If you remember, I raised this issue repeatedly when our Western colleagues wanted to discuss the situation on Belarus-Poland border in the Security Council, and on the margins when they were making press statement, they were totally overlooking this issue. And I was, on the contrary, very specific, saying that there should be attention to how Poland and Lithuania are treating the migrants, how they are pushing them back against any European and international norms. There were a lot of casualties, there were a lot of irregularities, there are a lot of NGOs who are not being allowed to the Polish and Lithuanian side of the border, whereas it's total transparency on the Belarusian side of the border. They can come and see whatever they want, speak with whom they want, far from what we have in Poland and Lithuania. So these are clear double standards, and the information that international structures have paid attention to this is a bit encouraging. As for Belarus' bid to the UN Security Council for the period of 24-25, if I'm not mistaken, this is really a very interesting story, because Belarus was in the chart of the Eastern European group as an agreed candidate since 2007. And Slovenia was there at some later stage, 232, something like this. And nobody was trying to change this situation. And there are nominations for each and every year. This year is Albania, and then is Belarus. And everything was clear, but all of a sudden, when Western countries realized that Belarus is very likely to get the seat in the Security Council, they just decided to avert this scenario, and very hastily and rapidly Slovenia decided to make nomination for the same period as Belarus, and to withdraw from its period that was planned before. This is, of course, absolutely clear action and clear provocation, and I really hope that Slovenian bid will fail, because this goes against any rules, any norms of civilized behavior. This is clearly politically motivated, and we will raise this issue. We will show that Belarus was there as an agreed candidate, and there are absolutely no reasons to deny its right to bid for the non-permanent membership of the Security Council. Though we never disclose our preferences on whom Russia will vote and whom will we support as every P5 member state. But this situation is outrageous. I don't have a long institutional memory in the United Nations, but I don't remember a situation of this kind. There were conflicting situations in African group, in my memory, some in Latin American group, but the situation when somebody just jumps in after after many, many years when the candidate was already agreed. This is totally a political move, and this is a shame for European Union and our Western countries.
Quick follow-up, Ambassador, on the security private entities like Wagner you mentioned. I mean, we see a lot of exchanging of accusations between Russia and Western countries about how much these entities are involved in conflicts that are part of the Security Council agenda. Libya is a great example, and we read the UN reports about that. Now Mali. Do you see that there is a need for an action in the Security Council to regulate maybe, or to shed more light on these entities, and maybe to put more pressure on these entities, or to have certain frame or anything to discuss this matter in the Council?
It depends on what you mean by discuss. To discuss whether there are private security companies or not, I think it's worthless, because there are, as I told you, they are on the market, and this is unfortunately a market. You can support it or you can condemn it. It's your personal position, but it exists. If there are certain irregularities, of course they should be tackled, but not fake news, not allegations, but facts. And we have seen, frankly, very, very few facts, if any, about any irregularities. So we refute the information that is circulated in the reports about this fact, and we criticize the panel of experts who produce these kind of unsubstantiated reports. It's kind of, the same SOFA experts who do it with Syria, for example, when they accuse Syrians of irregularities and of using chemical weapons on the basis of video reels in the internet created by white helmets, and which are contested by serious specialists. So it's more or less the same. We don't see any proofs, we just see allegations, and that's it. Well, we think that the fact that there are these security companies, we can do nothing with this, and well, the level of whether they are involved in certain activities should be discovered. As we remember today, there are issues with this Blackwater group in Iraq, with the what was it named, Silver Corp group in Venezuela, for example. These are the facts that we know. And these are not Russian security groups. If we have real facts, if we have information that is really worth considering, then we can come back to this issue. But so far, these are just allegations and fake news. So nothing to speak about.
As I said, we have a number of questions in the chat. James Reinald, the first one.
Much, gentlemen. Really appreciate the time you're giving us today.
Thanks, Marcel.
I've got a question for Mr. Polyanskiy about Syria, and this is on that issue of the cross-border aid and cross-line aid. We're coming up to the 6-month deadline from the most recent Security Council resolution. That's on January 10th. The recent SG report said that the cross-border aid remained critical. And now then we get to this what might be a disagreement between the different sides in the Council on what the resolution means. From the Russian perspective, does that mean that Bab al-Hawa crossing is automatically renewed for another 6 months or not?
Let's not rush things. It's only 28th of December, and the issue is to be decided, as you mentioned, on the 9th of January, so we still have a lot of time. Let's not be too quick. We are still considering our position in this regard. We took note of the report of Secretary General, and I spoke about this at the relevant meeting of the Security Council. We think that in general, it answers the requirements that were set in the resolution in question, 2585, if I'm not mistaken. But we think that, and I also pronounced it quite openly, that our Western partners and the parties could have done more for organizing the cross-line deliveries. We note that cross-border deliveries are important, but we think that there are a lot of unnecessary and artificial hurdles in this regard that can't be justified, and we all need to work together in good spirits in the Security Council to overcome these hurdles and to create the conditions for the implementations of 25 and 85 in terms of making more cross-line deliveries, making them sustainable, of the implementation of early recovery projects, for ensuring more transparency in cross-border and cross-line, by the way, deliveries as well. So we think there are still a lot of efforts that need to be deployed and a lot of things to be done in this regard. So we do not conceal this.
Okay, Benny.
But as a follow-up, in a simple sense,
Okay.
Yeah.
come January 11th, do you believe that Bab al-Hawa should be open or closed?
Come January 11th. Let it come. Let it snow.
Okay.
Let's wait a little bit.
Especially on January 11th. Benny.
Yes, Ambassador. So, since we're at the end of the year and it's a little philosophical, you mentioned China. We noticed that the UN, of course, you often vote as a bloc. Geopolitically, how do you describe the relation between Russia and China, and a little bit of the history of how we got here, and also how does it relate to the United States?
A little bit of history from my part about this.
Yes.
You want history from me? Okay. Well, as you know, our relations with China were not very positive at the moment of dissolution of the Soviet Union that we all remember today. But gradually we started to understand each other much better, and China is our strategic partner. China is our most important neighbor. China is our most considerable trading partner, and this is in itself enough to pay closest possible attention to the relations with this country. That's why we made our choice. It was not conditional on all this rift with the West that we experienced at the beginning of the 2010s. It's an issue in itself, so we had to make this pivot towards the East. It was long overdue, regardless of our relations with the West. And again, it's not at the expense of our relations with the West, but the West is turning a blind eye and deaf ear to our positions, to our preoccupations, to our priorities. So that's why we, of course, value very much the attitude that our Chinese partners display towards us. We discuss international issues and issues of regional cooperation in very good spirit, very open-mindedly. There is no pressure from any one of us on another, and that allows us to coordinate closely on many issues of international agenda, which we view either identically or very, very similarly. And this, of course, makes us optimistic about our relations with China. We think that the whole world should benefit from good relations between Russia and China in regional dimension or in global dimension. So this is an undoubtedly positive trend. Okay?
Betül.
Hi, thanks, Theodore. Thank you, Ambassador, for the briefing. Turkey and Armenia have recently appointed special envoys to normalize relations, and the two countries plan to have talks possibly in Moscow. No date has been set as far as I'm aware. So my question is, are there any discussions as to when these talks are planned to happen? Do you know? Can you give us a date? Also, how does Russia plan to contribute in addition to hosting these talks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's difficult for me to comment on behalf of my Armenian and Turkish colleagues about the contents of their possible negotiations, the agenda, and so on. I don't think we are involved to that extent to this trend, but I can definitely tell you that we welcome this trend. We think that we are in favor of closer regional engagement, and we would be very much welcoming the demanding of Turkish-Armenian relations. That's why I'm not surprised that the meeting is supposed to take place in Moscow. We are good partners both with Turkey and with Armenia. We were promoting the regional intensification and improvement of regional ties, of economic networks in the region in the context of Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict recently. This was part of the settlement package to establish closer neighborly ties between the two countries, and we very much promote this process. So Turkey was always kept in mind while we were working on these arrangements, and we're keeping, of course, our fingers crossed, because it happened before, and this is very fragile process. Still, there is very, very little trust among the parties and a lot of suspicion, so we need to overcome this. And if we do, then of course, I'm repeating this several times during this press conference for different contexts, but the whole world will benefit from this, really, from relations, from this re-establishment of normal neighborly relations between Armenia and Turkey. But again, we are quite far from this. Let's move step by step and encourage the possible openings of the two countries towards each other. Okay.
Evelyn Leopold.
Good to see you, Ambassador. Evelyn Leopold, Past Blue, Independent Media Institute. Can you look into your crystal ball for the new year? The obstacles and demands for the JCPOA seem to grow daily on all sides. Do you, by any chance, see an opportunity for an agreement this year, or is that going to drag out and drag out? Thank you.
You know, I am by nature a very, very big optimist. That's my problem sometimes. So I am very optimistic towards a lot of situations, and I think it's an easier way to live in this way. So I strongly believe that we will succeed in relaunching of JCPOA. We had very rocky time this year. First, we were waiting for the Biden administration to come back on board, and it was a long process, about 5 months. Then there were elections in Iran, and the new Iranian team was formed. Now I think Iranian team is back there, and this is the time for really meaningful and substantial discussions. And as far as I am informed, these discussions are going on. I think yesterday the 8th round was opened of these JCPOA talks. We have very good professional team in Vienna, headed by Ambassador Ulyanov, my good friend. And I am very confident in their diplomatic skills. And I know it's not an easy exercise, it's not an easy ride, but I'm very optimistic. I think that we have all the necessary conditions for a success, for a long-awaited success, that we could announce that JCPOA is back on track, which will contribute very much to the dissuasion of tensions in the region.
But, sir, the demands keep increasing on all sides. I just wonder how anyone can overcome these obstacles in a very in a meaningful period of time.
That's our job as diplomats, to make demands and to accommodate them, and then to come to a certain common ground and compromise. That's why there is nothing extraordinary in all sides formulating their demands during the negotiations. That's what the negotiations are for. So I'm absolutely sure that the that my colleagues in Vienna, I mean not only Russian colleagues but others, are keeping good hold of the situation and will not let it go without control. That's my confidence, and that's what my crystal ball tells me.
Thank you.
Okay, Abdul Hamid.
Thank you and Happy New Year, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Abdul Hamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. My question, Mr. Ambassador, about the Israeli bombardment of every part of Syria under the very open eyes of the Russian Federation. Recently, they bombarded the port of Latakia twice. And yet we don't hear much from the Russian Federation. They don't condemn the Israeli raids. Apparently make people question, why is that? Since you have excellent relation with Israel and strategic relation with the Syrian government, how can you allow this to happen?
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you too. I think there was already a question in this regard on these strikes, and I replied that we really need more information to understand what has happened. And in general, we condemn any actions that could aggravate the situation. We never approved of any strikes in this region, including Israeli strikes. But as far as I understand, the issue is complicated by the fact that Israel never admits such strikes. So we need to kind of get more information about what has happened. And we tackle this issue bilaterally with Israel. Absolutely, we never conceal that we do not approve of such behavior. And I don't have any further details on this. I also, as you did, saw the information about alleged strikes on Syria, and this is very worrying, and we should avoid this kind of situation. But we need more information about this to react properly.
If I may just follow up, how can we believe that the Russian Federation, with all its technical advances, satellite and intelligence, cannot verify that these raids are coming from Israel?
Maybe we can verify, but this information doesn't come to me, frankly. So I don't have any official confirmation, neither from Israel or from Russian Federation, what was behind these strikes or how they were conducted. That's why it's very difficult for me to comment on this situation. Again, in general, I think that this is a very bad development for the regional stability and security, and we never approve this kind of attacks, or whoever could have carried them. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, I have no questions on the list.
So that's it? Then I exhausted all the questions.
If Pamela Falk, who has just wrote me an SMS, will not connect immediately and ask a question, we will end up this year.
Okay, then we'll wait
right here.
Several seconds for Pamela to...
No, she is not going.
She's not going. Okay. Then,
if you gentlemen wanted one more question to finish off the year, I'll do another one. It's James Reinhold, Mr. Polyanskiy. I just note, of course, we're only a couple of days away from the Security Council membership changing once again, as it always does every year. 5 members leave, 5 new ones come. It's, they're not permanent members. They don't carry a veto, but there are some interesting countries in there. As a journalist, I'd immediately think of Brazil and the government of Jair Bolsonaro, and perhaps also the UAE joining the council, given its interesting and growing role in the region. Just from the Russian perspective, what do you think of the new makeup of the council, and how this might create opportunities and difficulties for Moscow in the coming year?
Thank you for this question. Indeed, we will have the change of membership, of non-permanent membership in the Security Council. And we are looking forward to working with our new neighbors, new colleagues. This always implies something new for the Security Council, and every country that comes has a very relative experience usually in Security Council matters, so we have to be patient. We have to really make these countries understand better the way we work, the limits of our work, the limits of expectations that are sometimes in national capitals on the membership in the Security Council. There are different constellations and compositions. I can't say that the current composition was easy for us or difficult for us. This is a fact of life. We have countries with different backgrounds, some of them aligning with each other as members of Collective West, some of them having their own position. I'm looking at the countries that are incoming members. I can't say that we have particular problems with any one of them. We have bilaterally quite good relations. There are nuances, of course, and details, and devil is in the details. So we'll see, and very much will depend on, of course, on the development, on the situation in the world. But I'm absolutely sure that Security Council will preserve its collective spirit, and we will also try to establish and maintain the best possible personal relations with all the incoming diplomats, which is indispensable for our good tackling of Security Council business. So we respect each other, we sometimes agree to disagree, but this is also important, but we understand that there is a big responsibility on our shoulders, and we need to carry on, and we need to work together to find compromises and to find some openings and possibilities to move forward, even the most difficult issues. I think that this year we are to 99.9% succeeded in promoting the agenda of the Security Council and to avoid major disagreements. So hopefully we will do the same next year as well, and I'm looking forward to welcoming new members on January the 1st and to working with them. Thank you very much. I just wanted to wish everyone a Happy New Year. I think you have already had your Christmas, most of you, but for those who didn't, like myself, Merry Christmas as well. And I'm also looking forward to our meetings, to your questions, to the situations where we can be helpful to you to better understand Russian priorities, Russian politics, and maybe the situation in the world from Russian perspective. And hopefully we will end next year with some concrete and palpable results with these negotiations that we are starting in January, which will be very important for the whole world and for the way the international situation will develop in the years to come. Thank you very much. All the best to you.
Happy New Year.